Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for getting on here to take some time for this presentation. And often I start this presentation by asking people, rhetorically, really, how many people think there is age discrimination out there. And I think if I asked it here, everybody would raise their hands. And the reality is that there is age discrimination. You can't argue with that. But the other reality is that people are getting hired in their 40s, in their 50s, and in their 60s. And you really have to have that right mindset. You can't dwell on age discrimination. You can't worry about it. You can't think it's happening, because that's going to affect the way you come across in your networking conversations, in your interviews, etc. Now, as for me, just to give you a quick background, I worked for almost 25 years at Johnson & Johnson. And my career was going great. I had 7 different positions while I was there. I was in senior director roles, and everything was going great until one day it wasn't going so great. And I got this new general manager at the operating company I was working at. And in our first meeting, he said to me, "Ken, I've led 2 different sales training and leadership development teams in my career, and you will never live up to my expectations." Which was really one of the worst demonstrations of leadership I've ever been involved in. And I really, a lot of times, you leave something like that and you think, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that, but I was on it. And I said, you know what, Eric, I have always met or exceeded expectations throughout my career, and I look forward to exceeding yours. I could have dropped the mic and just walked away. I felt so good about that one. Except he got those cold, dead shark eyes and said, no, you will never live up to my expectations. And he pretty much made my life miserable for about 8 months. And I wasn't smart enough to have been managing my career up to that point, and at that point to say, you know what, there's writing on the wall here. And then I found myself in the HR office, and I found myself out of work. And I went to a lawyer. I said, everybody said, this is age discrimination. Ken, of course it is. You're 52 years old. What else could it be? And I bought into that, and I wanted it to be that. And I went to a lawyer, and she said, Ken, maybe it is, but it's a really hard thing to win. So you could give me your money and we could hope, or you could just move on with your life and focus on the next stage. And it didn't happen right then and there, but it took me about 3 months really to get over the devastation of losing my job at 52 years old with 2 kids in college and 1 in high school. But I did, and I figured out things, and I learned, as many of you are learning, about this, how do you look for a job when you haven't looked for one in a long time? During my 50s, I actually got 3 different jobs, 2 with consulting companies as full-time employees, and 1 with Bristol-Myers Squibb. And just so you all know, I'm still in my 50s. I got a couple more months, so don't put me in, I haven't made the next stage yet, but I'm okay with it, whatever happens. So my first point is that the first thing you have to do to overcome age discrimination is get in your mind that your age is not a deficiency. Your age is a benefit, as your experience and the things you're going to bring to your next employer. So today we're going to talk about these things. When does age come up as an issue? How can you take age out of the equation? And what do you do to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that shows you to be up to date and now and ready to go with the times? We're going to talk a little bit about what I call the trust success model, and then how to position yourself to be the right person for that job. So we're going to do a quick polling question here. Which one, and Zoe, if you can help out with this, which one of these is illegal? If you could, take a few seconds and pick. Is it not hiring someone because of their weight? Asking about their age? Is it everything? I missed that first one. Or not hiring because of political affiliation? And wow, okay, we got only two responses, but here we go. Okay. Give about 10 more seconds here. And okay. So where we're at here is 50% of you said that all of the above are illegal. And let's see, we had 13% because of political affiliation, 25 because of age, and then one person, 13%, said none of the above. And the actual, oh, I could actually share results. I'm sorry about that. There. Now you can see them yourself. And the actual correct answer is, I'm going to get rid of this now, is actually none of the above. That is correct. They actually can ask you your age on an interview. Now, they can't discriminate and not hire you because of your age. So it's a little bit of almost a trick question. They can ask, but if they do, then they're going to get themselves in hot water, because if you don't get the job, you can certainly say, hey, they asked my age and then they didn't hire me. Everything was going great. But the reality is, believe it or not, there's one state that it's not illegal to ask about your weight. Actually, in Michigan, they cannot hire you because of your weight. I don't understand what that means, why someone would say you're too big, you're too small, but they can say in Michigan, your weight is an issue, we're not hiring you. Strange, but true. Okay, so moving on. Whoops. So the law came into effect in 1967. It starts at age 40 is when it's considered that you cannot discriminate based on age for someone over the age of 40. And why does it come up? You know, how does it show? Well, it shows that if you're not up to date with things, if you don't understand what's happening in the market, certainly if you're not technologically savvy, it might show up if they think you cost too much, your salary will be too high, or, you know, when you hear that dreaded, are you overqualified for this job? These are signs that there's either you're showing yourself to be maybe older, or people are interpreting what you do or what you've done to be that you are older. So all of these things, though, you can impact how you come across, how you present yourself, or how you handle it. And we're going to talk a little bit to those things as well. So the areas where it would show up and where you could try to mitigate the whole interpretation that you're too old are really these three key areas: resumes, social media, and interviewing. A lot of times, and I'm sure Charlie and Ford get the same question, you know, should I put my age on my resume? Should I put dates on not my age, should I put dates on my resume, years of service, those kind of things? And I don't know about, you know, where Charlie and Ford stand on it, but to me, I figured they're going to find out at some point how old you are. You could pretend, you could put an old, you know, you could pretend, but if I put this picture on my LinkedIn profile, when I walked in, they'd notice something has changed. So you could pretend all you want that you're going to hide it from them, you'll fool them, and then you'll get in. Besides the fact that they're going to figure it out, is the fact that even if you are able to deceive them, which I don't see how, is that the way you want to start a relationship? It's not good, A, to even get the job if there's deception there, but B, if you faked your way into the job or lied your way into the job, that's really not a good way to get going. So I think it's you know, if someone's going to discriminate, if they look at your resume and see that you went to college in the 1980s and that's too old, then fine, let them eliminate you there rather than wasting your time going in for an interview for them to look at you and say, oh, I didn't realize they were that old, they're out. So don't hide it, be proud of it, and lead with it, with your experience and your maturity. But there also are ways that you could show that you are current, you are with the times, and it's how you present yourself. You know, dressing properly. My wife for a long time was giving me grief. She said, your pants are so baggy. People don't wear baggy pants anymore. That to me could be a sign of age if someone sees that. The hairstyle. I recently got rid of my mullet. I figured it was about time to get rid of the mullet. They're not in anymore, so that's out. And then certainly too, the way you carry yourself, your physical appearance is important. I say it half jokingly, when you come into an interview and you sit down, try not to do this. Ugh, not a good sign. People will see that you're probably a little fatigued just from walking in from the parking lot, and that is, again, not going to create the image you want to create. The other thing is how you carry yourself as well. And if you have not watched Amy Cuddy's TED Talk on power poses, I highly recommend it. She talks about body language, and often when body language is talked about, it's talked about reading other people's body language. If somebody has their arms crossed or they're covering up, it gives you the message that they're not open to what you're saying, or they're not interested in what you're saying. But what I really found fascinating about this TED Talk is she talks about how body language will influence yourself. So these power poses are standing big and strong and taking up space. And she talks about how that really can affect the cortisol levels in your body, the adrenaline levels, the hormones in your body, the fight or flight hormones. And by doing it 2 minutes a day, she talks about the fact that will boost your confidence. It will also help you to present in a more positive and strong way. It's about a 15-minute TED Talk. Excuse me. I highly recommend it. I watched it actually when I mentioned to you I got a job with Bristol Myers Squibb. And prior to going into that interview, I got there early, so I removed myself to the restroom. I made sure I looked under each stall to make sure nobody was there. And I practiced the power pose for 2 minutes, as Amy Cuddy had suggested. And I don't know whether it was psychological. Obviously, it was psychological to some effect, or whether it was physical with the hormonal levels. But I felt great after that, went out, and I did win the job. Wouldn't put it all on that, but I'm sure it didn't hurt. Check out the video when you can. I'd like to introduce to you today what I call the trust model. I think the trust success model is key, because in order for you to be successful, you need to have trust. You need to trust in yourself, that you believe in yourself, that you know you have what it takes to get the job, and that will come across in your interviews. And you need to build the trust with the hiring manager that you're the person that they could count on to get the job done if they put you in that position. And like any self-respecting acronym, trust is an acronym. And it stands for transparency, results, understanding, simplify, and team. And we're going to talk about each one, starting with transparency. Before we get into that, I got another poll question for you. And that is, which industry do you think struggles the most with ageism? In other words, which one do people feel like there's most age discrimination in? Okay. And did everybody vote? It's pretty clear-cut winner. I guess that was an easy one, wasn't it? Anybody else? Oh, here we go, getting a few more. Okay. And we're going to share the results. And technology is the winner. I think it's probably pretty clear that technology, it seems to be a very young industry, but that doesn't mean that we mid to late career people don't have a lot to offer. You know, going back to a point I want to make about how you present yourself, physical appearance, you know, this is an area you need to think about. So if you're a mid to late career person going to interview with a technology company, if you go in, you have to think about, is a suit and tie the proper attire to go into that interview? And this isn't just with technology, it's with any company, and really at any age. You need to understand the culture and dress appropriately. In technology, they often will look at people mid to late career and say that they can't be as up to speed as some of the younger generations might be. So, where are we? Okay, so in terms of transparency, the first thing you want to do, and this is at all stages, but as specifically to mid to late career, notice I don't like that older worker thing, by the way. We're mid to late career. You need to really understand yourself. You need to understand, what is it that I really want to do? When I was at Johnson & Johnson, at one point I was a senior director of marketing. And my boss was a vice president. And I remember one night I came out of my office, it was like 6:30 at night, I was going home, and I said goodbye to him, and I looked in his office and he looked miserable. He had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was stressed. He looked much older than he was. And I remember driving home that night thinking, you know, throughout my career, I've always aspired to get to the next level. And even in that role, I was thinking, okay, VP is my next step. But that ride home after seeing him, I said to myself, you know what? I don't want that level. I'm fine at this level. I hope to have different jobs at this level, but that VP level seems to be the point where you lose complete control of your life. And I decided that, I realized that it wasn't necessarily what I thought I wanted, is what I really wanted to do. And being transparent with yourself is about understanding what were the things I've loved to do in my career? What are my best skills? Do I want to lead? Do I want to be an individual contributor? Where do I want to work? How do I want to work? So one of the first things I'd say you need to do is really understand yourself, really take some time to think about what you've done and what you want to do next. You know, a friend of mine said to me when I got laid off at J&J, "Hey, Ken, congratulations." And I thought, he's being a wise guy. You know, what's he talking about? And he said, now you could find your passion and go do what you want to do and make money with it. And I thought, wow, that's great, except I don't know what my passion is. I've been working 25 years for a large corporation and essentially squashing my passion. So how do I find it? So I did some of those things I mentioned on the previous slide. And I thought about the different roles that I'd had in the past that I really loved. I love being a sales manager, leading people, helping them to get better, helping them to help their customers and clients get better and improve their lives. I felt like I love motivating people and providing value, and just in general, making people feel and be better after I had an interaction with them. So there were different things I could do. I could go back and be a sales manager again. I could be a teacher, which I always thought, boy, if teachers paid more, I would love to be a teacher. Or I could be a coach. And clearly I made the decision to be a coach, and I really have found my passion again. I get to do all those things that are listed there. I get to lead people, motivate people, provide value, and help them improve their lives. And I'll tell you, doing a job that you love to do is a lot better than doing one that you don't want to do. So the other thing that will come out of being transparent with yourself and taking inventory of yourself is developing your personal brand. A personal brand, as I'm sure many of you know, it's what makes you different than everybody else out there. How are you going to stand out from the crowd? What is your value proposition? And what are the benefits you have to bring to someone? You know, if any of you question, well, personal brand, that seems to be like the flavor of the day. I'd ask you to think about this. If I were to say to any of you, be all you can be, and I think because we're of that generation, I'm sure most of you remember that slogan and remember that that's the US Army. Or a little dab'll do you. Remember that one? That was about Brill cream. When I had hair, I used to use Brill cream. And the other one I always think about is Breakfast of Champions. And that, most of you know, are Wheaties. Well, you know, that last one, Breakfast of Champions, that came about in the 1930s. Think about that. 90 years ago, that came about. And when people hear Breakfast of Champions, Wheaties is what pops into the mind. So the question you need to ask yourself is, what do people think about when they hear your name? What is it about you that you leave them with? And if you're not sure about that, ask people. Ask your former colleagues. Ask your peers. Ask people that know you. When you think about me, or at least professionally, what do you think about? And that way, too, it's also a great answer to that tough question of tell me about yourself. Instead of going through your resume and, frankly, boring people to death, you can say something like, well, people say, my colleagues have told me that I am a problem solver, that when they have an issue they can't figure out, they come to me because I'm able to analyze a problem, and then I'm able to come up with a solution and execute on that solution. That's much more interesting than, well, in 1982, I graduated from college, I got my first job, and you need to stand out. You need to deliver the message of your personal brand. As for me, this one actually, frankly, probably is a little wordy, but I tell people, I help people be successful. I'm a career coach, I'm an executive coach, and my clients tell me I help them achieve more by relating to them, inspiring them, and helping them develop their skills and whatever marketing materials they need to achieve more than they've ever achieved before. And you want to keep it conversational, your personal brand, or your elevator speech, whatever you want to call it. But I also would challenge you on this. We've all been in meetings where we've gone around the room and everybody delivers their message. How many of those do you really understand what they do or what they're doing? And I don't know, personally, I find it hard sometimes to follow. So think about your personal brand in the way that you could tell it to anybody and they would get it. Or at the very least, they would ask you questions about, wow, that's interesting. Tell me more, because that's ultimately what your goal is here. Before I move on to the next one, and I should have said this up front, if you guys have questions, if you want to put them in the chat box, I'm going to take breaks along the way, and Zoe will keep monitoring that, and then she'll be able to give me questions from there. I'll also be sharing these slides. Zoe will get them out to everybody on. So, you know, take as many notes as you want, but know that you'll be getting these slides as well. So, Zoe, any questions at this point?
None so far in there.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the next part of the trust success model, that being results. I mean, when it comes down to it, that's what the job search is all about. It's about results. It's about results at every step of the search. When you're networking, it's about finding people, talking to as many people as you can, getting to the right people. When you're interviewing, it's about conveying to the interviewer the results you could bring to that company that you have brought to other companies. And obviously, the ultimate result is getting your next job. But in order to catch people's attention, because there's a lot going on, you've got to do it quickly. Whether it's a cover letter, whether it's your resume, whether it's an interview, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, you don't have a lot of time. You know, the attention span has decreased over the more technology has entered into our world. But if you think about the average attention span being 8 seconds, and that the average speed of speaking for an adult is 150 words per minute. That's 2.5 words per second. If you have 8 seconds to grab someone's attention, you only have 20 words. So whether it's your personal brand, as I mentioned, tell me about yourself, interview, all those other things, you have to make those first 20 words count. Think about the cover letters you write. Are you writing, "Dear Sir or Madam, I'm writing to you about this job, rec number, blah, blah, blah." You just killed your 8 seconds and your 20 words. So get them right away. Have a quick attention-grabbing lines for each of those materials or conversations that you're having with people. Now, to get more into results, think about it in these terms. And let me move my visual here. When it comes to a resume, 5 to 7 seconds. They're going to look at that first line of your summary or whatever it might be, and they're either going to keep reading or they're going to dump it. You have the fact that 76%, 3 out of 4 resumes are discarded for unprofessional email addresses. Now, those of you that might have an AOL email address, you might as well change it to OLD, because that's what it says about you. It was a sad day in my life when I had to get rid of the Ken Sher stud at AOL.com, but you got to move on. You know, the mullet and the email address changed. It was a tough week for me, but you've got to do what you got to do. And then if you don't put a photo on a resume, I haven't really seen too many people that do this, but for whatever reason, even though they could see you on LinkedIn, 9 out of 10 resumes are dumped because of pictures. And I think probably because people are concerned about the potential for discrimination, for someone saying, well, they obviously saw my picture and dumped me. That could be it. But it also will take up space that's unnecessary. And then lastly, 3/4 of applicants are rejected just through the ATS. So you need to make sure you're writing your resume, if you have to apply online, which should be your last resort, in the proper way. So there are different styles, and we're going to focus, when I'm talking results now, we're going to focus on resumes. And really, the chronological one is what most people are using and should be using. The functional resume is one that allows you to just not go job by job, but allows you to bring up the skills and experiences and up to the top without it being in any kind of chronological order. I'm personally not a big fan of that. There is a place for it. If you're changing careers, you might consider using this, although I don't think it's really that necessary. But also if you just have a lot of different careers and you want to kind of bring everything together, that might be a way to go. Or you could use a combination resume as well. But the key, as I mentioned, if 3/4 of resumes are being discarded through an ATS, then you need to figure out a way to beat that. And the way to beat that is to identify the key words that those applicant tracking systems are looking for. So that is, I mentioned that it should be your last resort applying online, but there are times you're going to have to do that if you can't find somebody at that company to help you get in. And there's some great software out there. There's a program called Wordle.net. That's W-O-R-D as in David, L-E.net, or wordart.com. And there's also one called jobscan.co. Now, the first two are free, and they'll develop a word cloud similar to what you see here. So if you copy and paste your resume in, it will show you something like this. And what this does is the larger the words, the more often they're appearing in your resume, and those are the key words that are showing up for you. So you could run your resume through either of those programs and then see, is this the message I want coming across? Are these the key words that match the job or the industry that I'm looking at? Now, jobscan.co does it a little different. It actually, you would copy and paste your resume in one column and the job posting in the other column, and it will actually do the comparison for you and show you how strong your resume is compared to that job posting. And then you can tweak it again to make yourself more attractive to that ATS system. So, with again, the first two that are free, JobScan I think gives you 3 or 5 free scans per month, but the first two are totally free. You could also take a job posting and put it in there and see what are the keywords that come out from that job posting. So use the tools available to you beforehand, before you submit, before you get your resume in there, to make sure you're hitting the keywords that you need to. The other thing about your resume is you should be starting with a summary, and I'll talk to that in a moment, but that has to be those 20 words I talked about, those 8 seconds that you have to really reach out of that paper, reach out of that computer and grab the hiring manager by the throat or the recruiter to say, you've got to read more. So what statement are you going to make that's going to do that? And then the rest of your resume needs to hold the interest of the reader and tell a really good story about yourself and your career. Now, in order to avoid some of the traps that might, again, call out old, you need to make sure that you're really focusing, again, on the results. You should have the responsibility statements. That's the first thing under each job. Tell what were you supposed to be doing on that job. It really could almost read like right out of a job description. It should be 1 sentence, maybe 2 tops, taking up 2 lines, maybe 3 of your resume. What was the scope of your job? What were your day-to-day duties? And it's reflective of job description. But every bullet point under there should be an accomplishment statement. And I know this sounds kind of basic, but look at your resume right now. Look at your bullet points. Are you just saying you were responsible for something, that you were in charge of, that you led a team, which are basically just job responsibilities? Or are you talking about the value you added? Are there quantifiable results? And the way you can check that too, there are a couple ways. One is to first ask yourself, could anybody have written this? Could anybody have said that they led a team of 10 people to run a warehouse operation? And if anybody could say that, then that's probably more of a responsibility statement. But if there are results, if there are words in there like with the outcome of, the result of, leading to, those kind of things will then, if you have those in your bullet points, you know they're accomplishment statements. So instead of just led a team of 10 people to run a warehouse operation, it would be led a team of 10 people to design and develop processes and procedures that reduce the turnaround time of orders by 2 days. So there's a result. There's a big difference in those two. So when you read your bullet points, make sure that those are the accomplishments that show how well you did your job. The other thing to take age out of the equation, you don't need to put in 25, 30 years of experience. It's not a horrible thing, but why call it out? You're experienced. You don't need to go back to the 1970s on every job that you had. You should have 15 years, more or less, 3 or so roles that you had. And then anything after that, if you want to include it, it should be either just that job with maybe a description of it or just the years of it, but you don't need to have a whole lot. The exception to that would be if that's a job that really pertains to the job you're interviewing for or you're interested in. And maybe in between, there weren't things that would show how well you would do that. An example, if it's a sales role you're going for, and you haven't had a sales job for 20 years, but in between you had marketing or sales operations or things like that, you might want to have more detail about that sales role from 20 years ago, because that shows that you know what you're doing and that you've done that job before. I mentioned the AOL email address, and again, don't only list responsibilities. The other thing that'll give away your age on a resume is if you have an objective versus a summary. Now, the objective, it's old school. It used to be, I'm looking for a company that can help me develop my skills and become a leader with that company within 5 years or whatever. Besides the fact that that's old school as an objective, that's all about me, the applicant. You want to have a summary that tells about a little bit about what you are doing and what you've done, why you're in your value, but it should be forward thinking and talking more about how that relates to what you can bring to this next role. So the summary should be more forward thinking about the value you bring. It's the first thing, right? That's your first 20 words right there, folks. So make sure that that summary is powerful and an attention-grabbing statement. The other thing that'll give you away, or that you might be able to mitigate the risk of someone thinking that you're too old or out of touch, is by referencing technology, being proactive in referencing technology. Now, you may not be a technological genius. I certainly am not. But if there are opportunities for you to reference the way you've used technology in the past, and whether it's even, put together a spreadsheet that allowed us to analyze the trends and to make adjustments that led to increased sales. If I'm reading that, now I don't have a technology, I might not have a technology question in my head because, oh, look, she said it right there. She does technology, she gets it. If there are any trainings or certificates that you have or maybe you should be taking, get them out there. Let them know you've done that. Now, this last one, frankly, I've never seen it done. I'm not even sure I would recommend it, but somebody had recommended it at a talk. I thought it was interesting that you could add a QR code, which this link, and when you get the slides, you'll be able to use this if you want, would show you how to do that. But again, it might take any technology questions out of the picture because you're demonstrating that you have knowledge, that you have ability with technology. So my point is here, be proactive, include in your answers, include in your communications if you can, some references in some way to technology, and that might take it off the table for you. So before we go on to this section, Zoe, any comments or questions?
Yeah, we had some questions about the resume. So the first one is, if you only have 5 to 7 seconds, should the value statement be the first thing, even before your name and address and all that info?
No, that's a good question. You need to have all the information up top. If there are parts of things that are like a resume or LinkedIn profile that are relatively standard and they're not there, like in LinkedIn, for example, if you don't have a picture, people think could think you're trying to hide something. Well, the same thing. You need to have all that pertinent contact information up top. And really, the first place the reader's eyes are going to go are to that summary statement. So that's where you really want to have that attention grabber.
Okay, and then the next question was, if there's an application that requires you to add dates back to high school and it won't advance unless completed, is there, at that point, then this person saying, I got no response from the recruiter after that point, how do you get around putting in the dates?
Yeah, I don't think there is any way. And again, I would go back to, is it because, did they not call you back because of your age? Maybe. But again, if they didn't have that in there and that was important to them, and then you took the day and went out to interview with them, and as soon as they saw you, they knew, I didn't realize this person was of this age, then you wasted your time. So yeah, it's frustrating and you might want to try to get around it, but maybe you need to look at it that you're better off. You didn't waste your time with somebody that is very small-minded. Okay, is that it, so?
Yep, that was it.
Okay, great. Getting back to the trust success model, understanding. Really in this case, I'm going to focus on social media. And that was one of the biggest challenges I had after my 25 years with J&J. I hadn't had to deal with LinkedIn or any of that stuff. So you need to really make sure you pay attention to here, because LinkedIn in particular is going to be the way you market yourself. It's going to be the first impression a lot of people get of you. And you need to take the time to make sure it's right, that it's powerful, that it's impactful. You need to make yourself attractive to other people. You need to use it to build your network. A strong network is really, important to get your next job, especially if you feel like your age or there's something that's holding you back. You need to have a really strong network, because that overcomes a lot of things. They say, I think something like 75 to 80% of all jobs are gotten through somebody you know. And that's networking. And they may not be a best friend of yours. They may not be anybody you know right now. It may be somebody you meet through somebody else. But that's, 75 to 80% of jobs have gotten through networking. That's where you're going to need to spend the majority of your time. And LinkedIn in particular will help you get found by recruiters and help you find opportunities. And it's very similar to Google. If you were to put in the search bar anything you were searching for, I'd venture to say that you don't go to the 10th page of those search results to find what you're looking for. So your goal is to get to as close to the top of the first page as you possibly can. And you can do that. I know I did it, and I don't do it often enough, where I've gone in and I remember one time I was on page 12, which really was not very helpful. And I just started tweaking my profile with different keywords and writing things in a little different way. And I actually got myself to the first page, number 3 on that first page. So it can be influenced. So what you need to think about is, what words would a recruiter or a hiring manager put in the search bar to find someone like you? What words would they put in to find someone to fill a role, to fill a job that you're interested in? And those are the words you want to make sure you have peppered throughout your LinkedIn profile and your resume for that matter. Now, on LinkedIn, everything counts. I mentioned the picture, how important the picture is. Without a picture, people think you're hiding something. That's your first impression right there. I had one client who was a medical technician, and she had, when we first started working together, a picture of her holding a 6-foot-long albino snake. And I couldn't quite figure out what the heck she was thinking when she put that one up there, but we changed that in a hurry. It needs to be a professional looking picture. It should be a professional headshot if possible. But, iPhones can take good pictures as long as you do it in a professional way, from the chest up. Have a good smile on your face. Don't make it be a mug shot. You want people you want to look inviting. You want people to look like, yeah, that looks like a person I would want to talk to, a good, friendly person. The headline, that's what's right below your name on their LinkedIn profile. Very valuable real estate. That's a big part of the search algorithm that LinkedIn uses to find people. Now, recruiters pay a lot of money for this search license that they have, and it allows them to look at your profile differently than you and I would. But the headline is a big part. That's where you want to have a lot of good keywords. Again, thinking to what words would someone use to search for me. The summary, or what's now called the about section, is also very important. Now, this one is really a big differentiator to me between your resume and your LinkedIn profile, because the about section allows you to market yourself, to sell yourself. And you should write it in the first person. I am this, I do that. And make sure you're talking about the position you're interested in, that you want. Get the name of that role out there. And in the first paragraph, you want to talk a little bit about what you do, how you do it, what your approach is to your business. And that could be about 2 or 3 sentences. Your second paragraph, it could also be in bullet points, should be a couple of accomplishment points that reinforce that top section, which is kind of like your summary, that first, the first part of the about section. Then after that, you could talk about the type of culture you like to work in, the way you do your work, some of the things that would tell somebody what it would be like to work with you. And in the fourth paragraph, you could put anything like, you could put any special skills or certificates you have. You could put in personal information about what you like to do when you're not working, any volunteer organizations you have, because people hire people that they like, that they want to be with. So telling in this fourth paragraph or so about section, you could really paint a good picture of what you would be like to work with. So take the time to do that. Include those key search words. LinkedIn also allows you to build your network by finding people, and don't just find that first level of person. Dig deep. Find who they are connected to. What other people can you connect to in a company or an organization? And don't stop. Always stay engaged on LinkedIn. Put time aside every day to check it out, to make comments on other people's posts, to post things yourself, to write your own articles, to get your name out there so that eventually people are going to notice you and start to wonder, let me check this person out. And this is particularly important in groups. Pick 3 to 5 groups that pertain to your areas of interest and make sure you're commenting and you're engaged in those groups, if not every day, 2 or 3 times a week. Because there are recruiters in those groups, folks. There are hiring managers in those groups. The more they see your name, eventually they may say, I keep seeing this person's name every day. Let me check out their profile because I think I might want to talk to them. So get involved. Quick stop. Questions, Zoe?
We had a few about LinkedIn. So someone wants to know, should I limit experience on LinkedIn to 15 years also?
That's a good question. I think you can. I'm not sure. I think you can in the same way. But I'm not sure if it would hurt to have all your experience down there.
Okay. And then another question, to what extent do we need to make LinkedIn closely match what the resume says?
Okay. I think that, first of all, personally, and there may be debate about this, I think that the work experience section of your resume and the work experience section of your LinkedIn profile, I think they can be copy and pasted personally. But at the very least, you need to be consistent. You need to, your dates need to be consistent, your responsibilities, the outcomes. You have to make sure that if somebody looks here, they get the same story that they get there. And that's important regardless of whether it's resume, LinkedIn profile, networking conversations, interviewing. It's your personal brand. It's your message. You need it to be consistent all the way through.
Great. And then there was another question. A research study cited that when 10 executive recruiters reviewed the same candidate's resume, there were 10 different opinions and 10 different recommendations as to what the candidate needs to do to improve its effectiveness. So whose advice do you follow?
I'd follow the 11th person personally, but no, actually, it's funny because I say that to people all the time that, you know, you can't, that I didn't know that that was actually a study, but I know that that's a fact. Everybody has their own opinion. In the end, it's what you feel most comfortable with. It's your resume. You need to feel comfortable and confident with it. Is it going to thrill everybody who sees it? No, but if you hit the key points, give your strong attention grabber, have results throughout your resume, that's really what's most important. Okay, I'm going to move on. We're nearing the end. I'm going to skip over these questions just for the sake of time. But interestingly, only 8% of companies include age as part of their diversity programs, which is kind of a sad thing. But getting to the simplified portion of the trust model, I'm going to focus on interviewing, and it's all about preparing, practicing, and having a process that you can consistently answer questions in a very strong way. Sun Tzu wrote the book called The Art of War. It's a perennial top-selling business book. But basically what he says is that you need to win the war before you get to the battle. And you've seen athletes do that all the time. They put their headphones on and music, and they play the game in their head before they even get out on the court or the field. You need to do the same thing. You need to be fully prepared. And when you get to that interview, everybody could be influencing the decision here. I always would ask my administrative assistant, what did you think of this person? And if they were disrespectful or rude or only cared about talking to me, that was a mark against them. That didn't help. So from the parking lot attendant to the receptionist to the administrative assistant, everybody is important. And when it comes to age discrimination, you need to, even more so than anybody else, show a passion, show an energy. Sometimes interview days can be long. You can't let down. You need to show people that you're in it and you have staying power and you have the passion and energy to get the job done. And especially because of your experience, you need to be confident. You need to show them that you're not going in as an applicant interviewing for a job. You're going in as somebody that they need, that they want. Now, you don't want to be cocky or arrogant, but you need to come across in a confident way. I know you've all seen the STAR method, and I added an S to it, the so what. And to me, what this stands for is, the great thing about the STARS method is this. A, it allows you to tell a story. The best sales technique possible is telling a story. That's what everybody does. Everybody loves a story. We've heard stories since we were kids. Tell a great story. It also, sometimes when people get nervous, they ramble and they digress and go off and off. I've done that plenty of times myself. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've had to say, what was the question again? You know it's happened to you. So this allows you to put it in kind of a corral so you don't get too off. Now the so what, the reason why I think that is important is because the so what allows you to connect your answer to the job at hand. Make it easy for the interviewer. Tell them why you told them that story. Paint the picture of you in that role. The reason I tell you that story is because I know that problems often come about in this job and you need somebody that can take charge, analyze the situation, and solve that problem. And this was an example of how I do that. So make it easy for your interviewer by telling them why you're telling them. Now, it's impossible to know every question that you can be asked in an interview. So what I suggest is you write out your STARS answers and identify the top competencies excuse me, that you think will be addressed, that are important to this job. And then put your STARS answers under each of those competencies. And you should probably have 2 or so under each one. And some of them may be repetitive, but you need to have a good 5, 6, 7 STARS answers so that you're ready for any question. And then when you're in the interview, you don't even have to think so much about what the specific question was. Just think, what are they trying to find out here? Are they, this is a question about leadership. Here's my leadership STARS I'm going to give them. Oh, here's an answer about analytical skills. I'm gonna give them this answer. Now you can see that analytical skills and problem solving, they could be the same STARS there. But that's why you want to have maybe more than one on under each competency so that you can go to different answers. I'm going to continue through and then we'll get to questions shortly. But the last part of the trust model is team. One of the questions I asked myself a lot when I was laid off is, oh my gosh, how could this have happened to me? I can't believe it. This is crazy. And so you need people around you that are going to support you and help you. You need some people that are going to nurture you and rub your back when you need it. And you need some people that are going to just give you the straight facts and the tough love. And you need to have a great network of people that are going to help you, that you can count on. And the reality is, looking for a job is hard. It's going to take you longer as a mid to late career person than it would as a 20-something or 30-something person. It's a fact. You have to remember, though, it only takes one yes. For all those no's, you're getting closer and closer to a yes. So keep at it. Keep reminding yourself, if you need to, go back to that inventory you did to remind yourself of the value you have to bring, of the great work that you've done in the past. Because in the end, when you look at your career as a whole, being out of work is probably going to be just a blip on the radar screen, just a little bump. Right now, it feels like everything, and it's taking forever. But in the end, if you stay positive and stay focused, you'll see it'll be worth it. You'll get to a place where you're in a great job that you love, and you'll look back probably and say, I'm glad that happened, because I didn't realize how unhappy I was in that last role. So now as we wrap up, we've got about 7 minutes or so. Zowie, questions?
There is a comment here from Charlie. The resume is your full-length feature film. Your LinkedIn profile serves as the trailer, which is designed to get people to go to the theater. And then another comment he had was, companies seek talent that demonstrate competence and collaboration, elevating your team and shared values.
Yep. It's true. It's really, great leaders take the blame when things don't go well, but great leaders give the credit, and they're confident enough to know that when they're able to describe and elevate and communicate the value their team brought, that's reflective of them as a leader. And nobody wants to hire someone who it's all about me. They want to hire someone that is a team player, that knows how to get things done. So that's a great point. And Charlie, thank you too for your point as well. Okay. We good, Zoe?
No other questions in the chat. Anyone else have one they want to ask out loud?
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, Ken. You mentioned the 3 to 5 groups and kind of staying active. Sometimes it gets a little bit depressing or frustrating that you post a lot, or that you feel that you're active in certain areas. Certainly, the groups is a new one to me. But how do you not get frustrated by it, or how do you better understand if you're making any inroads, or even if people are reading? I mean, it just seems like a lot of times we post and crickets.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of aspects of the job search can be depressing and demoralizing. I'm sure we've all been ghosted, right? You go on an interview, everything's going great. You think, all right, I think I nailed that one, and then you never hear from them anymore. And you're right, and you check in, and you don't hear anything. I think that's partially where your network needs to come, your support system, to help make sure you're still positive. I think maybe too, maybe you could ask people, I keep posting these things, I'm not getting anything back. Do you have any feedback for me? Can you check them out? Let me know what you think. I think a great way too to try maybe another approach would be, instead of posting an article or anything, is to ask a provocative question. Maybe you talk about something going on in the field or something you've done and say, hey, when I've been met with this problem, here's what I've done. Tell me, what other solutions have you guys seen out there? So instead of just putting stuff out, try to make it interactive, try to create that conversation. Hope that helps a little bit. Mars? Okay. All right, I'm just going to put a quick wrap on this. Just had one other question, but I'll just give you the answer right there. It's going to take you longer, as I mentioned. The fact of the matter is, baby boomers are going to take longer. I think where it might take 8 weeks, 12 weeks for someone who's maybe a little bit younger, it's going to take longer. The reason, that's not to discourage you. That's just to tell you to be patient and know every day you're getting closer and closer to getting that opportunity you're looking for. So don't give up. I'm sorry, here was the answer. I had the wrong one there. 46 weeks for a baby boomer. It's actually, I believe it was 8 weeks for the younger folks. So just to wrap, you see the trust success model. Each aspect of this will help you prepare and position yourself to be the best candidate for that role that you're looking for. I really appreciate your time and the questions. Maybe another question or two might have come in. I'm not sure. But certainly, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you want to talk about anything. The one thing I could say to those of you who are out of work right now, as I mentioned earlier, I've been there. I know it's not a pleasant feeling. So even if it's just you're looking for someone to maybe help commiserate with you, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.